Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Welcome into another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, we have so many questions.
Too many questions.
We've got to go quick this week. Do you think we can get them all in?
We'll try.
We'll try and do it in just under an hour for you guys. We have several questions about Arkansas football's new offensive coordinator, so let's get right into it. Maxadories wants to know, what would you think about Dan Enos coming back to Arkansas if Briles leaves?
Now, here's why I put that up there, because that question was submitted before Enos' name popped up. Who had that name? You didn't.
I did not.
You thought Dan Mullins.
Hey, I had Dan right.
Yeah, I thought Zach Kitley at Texas Tech because he was a young guy, and Sam Pittman had been going after young coordinators, and we were wrong. I didn't see that name anywhere until it popped up, and then I went, "What a dummy I am! Why didn't I think of Enos?" Because they'd worked together in 2015 at Arkansas and were very successful, but nobody saw that coming. So Maxadories must be a genius. Hope he asks some more questions. Maybe he should become a source.
I don't know. I want to know who Maxadories is. Maybe he'll let his identity be known. Blood Red Hog says, I remember Enos at Arkansas. Should we be excited or not? And then there's some
yeah, he's got these numbers that he's trying to convince us that Enos is not any good.
Do you believe in those stats right there?
Well, he had. Can we pop
them back up again? I want to see.
Well, that's not them, but he's saying that he scored 0 points against Penn State, 10 against Wisconsin, 14 against Iowa, 16 against North Carolina State. Okay, look, Maryland had some injuries like Arkansas, and so there were some games when apparently their production dropped down. But as we look at these stats, they scored 30 points in a 13-point loss to number 2 Ohio State. They scored 22 points in a 12-point loss to number 4 Michigan. Tough schedule. Yeah. And then those 16 points they were held to against North Carolina State, but they won the game. It was their bowl game, 16-12. The big thing is they finished 4th in the Big Ten in scoring, total offense, and passing. To me, that is impressive. And by comparison, Arkansas finished 6th in scoring in the SEC, 5th in total offense, 8th in passing. Look, I think Enos is going to impact Arkansas's passing game more than anything else. He does run the ball. He's not just strictly a passing offensive coordinator. But he's big on his quarterbacks developing, reading defenses, throwing the ball, and also some other things, footwork for the quarterbacks, a lot of things like that. So I think he's going to have a very positive impact on Arkansas, but it's like anything. We're going to have to wait and see. I can't just sit here and promise you that he's going to be better than Kendall Briles. I mean, it's going to be an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I think he's going to be beneficial for KJ Jefferson to up his passing game.
Yeah, we'll see. That's what it looks like.
I know, it looks like that on paper, though, so hopefully that will be the case. Stu asks, how does Enos' new contract with Arkansas compare to what Briles had before going to TCU? A good question.
Well, there was never any official number given to this raise that Briles was supposed to get after he turned down the Mississippi State job, but the speculation went anywhere from $1.6 million to $1.7 million. He was making $1.2 million, so he was supposedly going to get, maybe a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 raise. What we do know is that Enos is coming in at $1.1 million, so if let's take $1.6 million would be what he was going to get. That's a savings of $500,000 a year. And then you throw in Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator, who was making $1.8 million, and Travis Williams comes in and he's getting $1.1, so that's $700,000 difference. So maybe Sam Pittman has $1 million, $1.2 million to play with. Now the issue is, does Hunter Yurachek let him have that, or does he take that money back? Does he say, hey, I got this money, I want to spend it on this or that, or I don't know.
Do you think he would do that, or would he just give it to football? I
don't know what he's going to do with it, but supposedly they're going to save over $1 million by hiring these 2 new coordinators.
That's not bad at all. I think Sam Pittman came out on top in that one. Our next 2 questions are related. So Edward Clutch is the first one, and he wants to know, what happened with Briles? He flirts with Mississippi State, tweets that he was ready to run it back with KJ. Then a couple of weeks later, he leaves for TCU. I get coaches move around, but the offense we have coming back is loaded. Did he fish for a raise one too many times? And the next question that relates to this one is from Razor Alex 88, who says, welcome home, Coach Enos. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam actually fired KB once he started flirting with them. TCU.
Yeah, okay, so what happened again, and we can only speculate on this. I can only tell you what I'm told because I'm not there. I'm not Kendall Briles. I'm not Sam Pittman. I'm not in the room when this is going on. So I'll just tell you what I heard, which is pretty similar to what I think most people in the media have heard, which is the first issue popped up when Kendall Briles' name popped up associated with Mississippi State because Sam Pittman basically apparently made the point to him, look, this is annoying. We're in the middle of trying to bring in people through the portal. We're fixing to bring in a bunch of guys for our 2024 recruiting class. And it would be helpful if they knew who their offensive coordinator was going to be, and it's not helpful if they're not sure who it's going to be. And if I can't bring them to you and say, hey, here's your quarterback's coach, here's your offensive coordinator, that causes an issue. So, yeah, okay. Decide what you want to do with this Mississippi State thing, but you know, we need to know something here. We need to get this worked out. And then, according to what I was told at that point, he called Enos, thinking maybe he would leave, maybe Briles would leave, and Enos said, "Yeah, I'll take the job." So he knows he has his guy. So then, again, what I was told is that Kendall Briles, his wife, his kids, they all liked Fayetteville. They did not like the idea of going to Starkville. So they thought about it and turned it down. And Sam Pittman said, okay, great. We'll give you a little bit of a raise here, but let's don't play this game anymore because we got stuff to do right now. We got recruiting and portal people and all this. We don't need this anymore. And then maybe, and again, there's no way to know this, maybe the people at Jimmy Sexton's agent firm, because I don't think Sexton deals directly with assistant coaches. I think he's got people that do it, but whoever was assigned to Kendall Briles, maybe he hears about this opening he knows there's an opening at TCU and he floats his name and it pops up. And maybe Briles is going, uh-oh, I didn't really want this to happen. But maybe that's not what happened either. Nobody knows for sure. But at that point, I'm told Sam Pittman said to him, well, I hope you have this job because you don't have one with us anymore because I've hired Dan Enos. And some people say that's why the hiring of Enos at Arkansas was announced before the hiring of Kendall Briles at TCU. I'm not sure that's necessarily true, and I'm pretty sure Briles already knew he had the job, but some people thought maybe he kind of got fired. I'm not sure you get fired if you have an option to go somewhere and you just haven't said yes. And the other people where you're currently working go by, we're hiring this guy.
Well, with all the backlash of TCU fans on social media.
Yeah, there was that going on.
It was a little stressful.
He could have been, according to what I was told, he could have been without a job.
Yeah.
Because at that point, Pittman was tired of this and had sort of told him no more of this. And then all of a sudden, this pops up with TCU, and it's like, I'm bringing Dan Enos in.
It's kind of funny, though, that the picture of let's run it back for 2023.
That was,
that was
difficult.
It felt like he was a little bit like showing Pittman, hey, I want to be here. This is showing that I care about this team.
And it could
this
be
program.
something as simple as he didn't mean for that TCU thing to get out there, that his agent just floated it, and the rumor got from there before Briles had ever said anything about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's kind of stuck with, okay, I got to do this. We'll never know which of those scenarios is correct unless somebody decides to talk, which they haven't and won't likely will talk. But it was an interesting thing that went on for several days, that's for sure.
It really was. This one also relates to this conversation. WV Hog Fan wants to know, is it possible that Sam Pittman encouraged Kendall Briles to find another job?
Yeah, that's a rumor that started right after the Missouri game. After they lost to Missouri, I was hearing from a pretty good source over there that, yeah, he told both of his coordinators, you need to look for other jobs. I don't believe that was the case, and for several reasons. First of all, let's start with Barry Odom. When Odom was up for that Tulsa job, and then remember he didn't take it, and then all of a sudden he's on a recruiting visit with Sam Pittman, and he's prominent in this thing, and it was like, hey, I got my guy here, and well, we're at this place with this kid, And then like a day later, he's gone.
He's going to Vegas.
And somebody even asked Sam Pittman, were you kind of caught off guard by that? And he went, well, no, and he kind of hemmed and hawed around. So I don't think that if he had told him, I think if Sam Pittman had said, hey, Barry, I appreciate you helping me out here for 3 years, and we're good pals and all that, but you need to take a hike, find a job, I don't think he would have turned the Tulsa job down. Or if he was going to turn it down and get the Vegas job, I think he would have told Pittman. Pittman wouldn't have been caught off guard. So I think that story's bogus. Now let's think, is the Briles story true? Well, if that story's true, why would Briles get an offer from Mississippi State, turn it down, and get a raise to stay?
Yeah.
If you tell a guy to leave, you're not going to give him a raise not to leave. That makes no sense. So that story, I'm pretty confident, was incorrect.
Gotcha.
I don't think he told either one of them to leave.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation, too, of why you think that. Big Boy asks, how do you feel about Coach Pittman's staff 2.0? What areas do you think that Coach Sam Pittman is excelling in and his shortcomings?
See, I don't think there's shortcomings. You're still going to, there's a raging debate on Twitter, on Hogville, anywhere you want to go, Facebook. About some people claim, oh, this is bad, that Briles, should have stayed. And then you got the people that wanted him gone. And then you got people that aren't sure about the coordinators and all this, and they're saying Sam's in over his head. I think he came out of this looking great. I mean, first of all, let's talk about Travis Williams, because all these fans that were mad that Arkansas was going with this three-man front, and supposedly Odom was going with the three-man front because he didn't trust his secondary, so he needs more guys back in coverage. Well, Travis Williams likes attacking quarterbacks, and he will send his linebackers in after them. He'll send corners after them, and he's got a four-man front, but he's also working with Marcus Woodson, a guy that he was co-coordinators with at Auburn under Gus Malzahn, so these guys know each other, and he's back there in the secondary. So there's going to be a good relationship between the linebackers coach, who's also the offensive coordinator, and the co-coordinator back here with the secondary. And I believe the idea is going to be, hey, we're going to get to the point where we trust our secondary. We're not going to be worried about them getting beat, so we have to have the extra guys back here, and we're going to attack the quarterback. So again, it's like anything else. We'll have to see as if this works. But to me, it looks a lot better than what you had before. And I was a Barry Odom defender, but I think Woodson he's a very aggressive young coach and a very good recruiter. And same thing with Travis Williams. One of them's the coordinator, the other's the co-coordinator, or whatever. So I think they came out on that on top. And then let's go with Morgan Turner, the tight ends coach. Now, look, again, Dow Loggins was a good recruiter, but he was a natural quarterbacks coach. He'd never been a tight ends coach, and that's what he was here because he wanted to come back home and get out of the NFL. But you traded a guy that, was basically a quarterbacks coach for a guy that was coaching tight ends for one of the best tight ends coaches in the country.
Yeah, tight ends you.
And by the way, this just ties in with Dan Enos, who has a reputation of running a two tight end offense and throwing the ball to the tight ends because you can also block with them. So it's a disguise almost. You may turn out to throw the ball on that play because your tight ends can catch it, but they can also block. So I think those dovetail into each other really well. And then you've got Enos, who we personally believe, I think both of us believe, that what he's going to do with KJ Jefferson is develop him as a passer. I could go right now on my computer and bring up about 25 plays from last year, which were all 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 11, all these third down plays in which they tried to throw the football for a first down, and you had an incomplete pass because it was thrown off target. KJ is a better deep ball. He's better at throwing the deep ball. He's not too bad throwing intermediate routes. He's not good at all throwing short routes. And I think that's what Dan Enos is going to work with him on. Also, KJ's footwork sometimes is not real good. And finally, he's going to go from basically trying to process an RPO offense where you're, I got to read these guys and figure out if I should hand this ball off or not, and remember all the times that he kind of held on to it.
And just
weren't sure what was going on. Then somebody gets squashed right there. Now there won't be I think under Enos, when you have a running play, it's a called running play.
Yes.
I'm not saying there won't be any options there, but I think there's a called running play. I think when they throw the ball, KJ Jefferson's going to have to read a secondary and see who's open. He's checking his options. So I think it'll be simpler for him. I think he will develop more as a passer. I think he will run less, which will expose him less to injuries, which was the biggest problem this team had last year, him hurt. They cannot afford for him to be hurt. So, although they're in better shape than they were because they've got a good backup now. So for all of those reasons, I think he came out really well with this new staff. I think they're in better position than they were.
Yeah, I think so as well. Definitely worthy of a 2.0 title. It's definitely upgraded. J Martin _AF1 asks, has Arkansas finally paid off all the salaries from previously fired coaches, i.e. Chad Morris? If so, it would seem we should be better off financially.
Okay, I was told they still have to pay Morris / Bielema through this coming year.
Okay.
So in December, they pay both of them off. So at that point, yes, and I think Mike Anderson was paid off a while back and Jeff Long and all that. So once they get those two paid off, I think they're probably in pretty good shape anyway because the revenues are up. And we just got through talking about all the money they're going to save with
that $1.2 million that's just flying around there.
And they're making a lot more money off baseball these days. So, again, I think they're in pretty good shape. But they still have to pay those two coaches, Brett Bielema and Chad Morris. They have to pay them. It seems just bad. They have to pay people, that didn't get the job done. But they got to pay them through the end of this year.
Well, after this year, they're done. They can wipe their hands of those two. Let's head over to basketball now. Well, Cowhog32 says, hearing Nick Smith Jr. is back at practice and could come back as early as the LSU game. Have you seen or heard anything to back this up? Has any media actually seen Nick Smith Jr. at practice in person?
We don't go to practice during the season.
So where do you think we go to practice?
Unless somebody was up there in the rafters hiding, spent the night there or something and snuck in. I don't think we would see practice. But we didn't have to see him at practice because he was at the Saturday Ole Miss game. So he's on the bench. Now, after that game, Sam Pittman said,
Sam, you mean
Sam.
You mean Eric Musselman? We're switching to basketball, Mike. You're good.
Eric Musselman said he's back, he's in school, he's not working out.
No, not practicing.
So in that respect, nothing else has changed. He's still getting treatment here, and there's no update. So now, would he play against LSU? I can't swear that he wouldn't, but it seems odd that the game's on Tuesday that he would be ready that quick. I would assume we would find out maybe that he's working out, and then he would play. The word continues to be behind the scenes February. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what we hear. So I don't expect to see him, but I wouldn't swear that he wouldn't play.
But to be fair, this is a rumor that's going around on social media that he might play in the LSU game because I saw a few people and said, wait, guys, what are we talking about? Coach
it could happen.
Said.
I'm not saying it won't happen. And if it did, Pittman, kudos to Pittman. Kudos to Musselman for not letting him know.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely true. Well, Kevin says Anthony Black is a point guard, not a two guard. Mike, did you say this?
Yeah, that was said on Phil Elson's radio show about 2 weeks ago. And I wasn't specifically mentioning Black.
Okay.
I said I didn't feel like this year Arkansas had a true point guard. They had a bunch of two guards that were playing the point. And I still maintain that Devo's not a one. He's a two. He's a natural two. I think Council the fourth is a two.
I think so too.
I even think Nick Smith Jr. is a two. He's not a point guard.
But Black.
Okay, Black has been a point guard in high school. He came in as a point guard, and he'll probably be a point guard in the NBA. But here's what I mean by that. He's struggling at that position because he's a freshman.
Yes.
If we saw him next year, if we saw him as a junior, if we saw him as a senior, like all other great Arkansas point guards of the past, he'd probably go down as one of the best Arkansas has ever had. Right now, here's what I believe. If Arkansas had an experienced point guard, let's say, I don't know, let's say if Corey Beck, was suddenly on this team,
on this team.
You go back into time and bring him up here, and you
give him some more
or any
years
other
of
really good
eligibility.
Arkansas point guard in the past who had experience, had played in the SEC before, and you put him on this team, you would see Anthony Black mostly playing the two. He would be better right now playing the two than being forced to play the one because he's a freshman. Now, he's getting better, and he goes back and forth. Everybody's talking about the 18 points I think he scored in the Ole Miss game. I watched that game. You were at that game. He had some turnovers in the first half.
Yeah.
He still dribbles sometimes and loses his dribble because he's tall and these guys get down underneath him. He still has on-ball defense problems. Sometimes if he's on the guy with the ball, he'll dribble right around him. So what is going on here? Well, I talked to a guy about all of this, and I said, why is it that Alabama's freshmen look better than Arkansas's freshmen? And he said, you know why? Because Alabama has experienced SEC players on their team. And what does Arkansas have? They have 2 guys with experience in the SEC, Devo and
Kamani.
Kamani, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, if you had more, I think these guys would be fine. But and then Musselman alluded to this after the game. He talked about how so many guys on this team are playing against people they've never played against before.
It's inexperience.
And he said it's going to be interesting when they play LSU because now they're playing a team that they've already seen. And he expects there to be a difference. Okay, what about Mizzou? They had played Mizzou before. They go on the road. Well, they got beat, but I'll tell you right now, I think they lost to Mizzou because of the refs. I think the last 5 minutes of that game, they got it stuck to them. They had a 10-point lead.
And Musselman kind of alluded to that as well with how.
Because they lost to Missouri, a lot of people are saying, it's just same old stuff. It was not. Go back and look at that game. They might not have looked real good in the first half, but in the second half, they had a 10-point lead with 5 or 6 minutes to go. Yeah. They were playing well in that game, and I think part of it was because they had played these guys before. So I guess what we're saying is as they continue to play teams for the second time, maybe we're going to see them play better. Now, the other point that a guy made about this was he said, have you ever looked at Kentucky with Cal bringing in all these 5 stars and how they've always struggled? He said because he was playing too many freshmen and he wasn't surrounding them with enough experienced players that had played in the SEC. So I think this is what we're seeing with a lot of our, not just the freshmen, just Walsh, and Black, but I think a guy like Ricky Council IV is playing in the SEC for the first time. So I think that may have been one of the things that hurt so bad, when Trevin Brazil went out because he had experience.
Had experience in the
SEC. He
had
played in the SEC. So I think that's partly what's going on here. And again, I believe that Black right now, if he could play the 2 more, and that would be predicated on you having a really good, solid, true point guard. It's not that he's not a point guard, it's that he's probably better playing a 2.
Yeah, well, okay. I guess I agree with you. I just think if you're looking at it, who sees the floor the best like a point guard on this team right now? Anthony Black.
But look at some of the issues he's had.
I
he dribbles into the lane and then he's stuck.
But he's young. He's young.
But that's right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
No question he's a point guard, especially next year, but he's not going to be here next year.
You're right. You're totally right. I look at my brother who's a natural point guard, and I asked my dad, I was like, why don't you put him in the games as the point? He goes, because he's a freshman. Yeah. I'm not going to play him. There are freshman mistakes, and they go away in the second year.
And even a 5-star is going to have problems being a freshman.
Exactly. It's the freshman thing. So Marty Bird's proxy, and I just started Ozark, so I know exactly who Marty Bird is now. But Marty Bird's proxy wants to know, are there any sanctions for officials who make such game-changing wrong calls as the ones made against the Hogs late at Mizzou, like we were just talking about?
Okay, that call was not an actual ref. It was a replay. I don't know what they call him, if they're a replay official or whatever. The guy in the booth.
The replay
they're
official.
connected with a guy in a booth somewhere, a central location. And that guy had it wrong. Apparently, according to the story, the refs, Musselman said, hey, it's under 2 minutes, let's review this charge thing. I think the guy was inside the circle, it's reviewable. The refs go over there and go say, okay, and the replay said, no, it's not reviewable, and they just went, well, okay. Now, they should have known the rule.
Yeah.
I can't believe that all of them got it wrong, but is the SEC going to do anything about that? I called some people in the athletic department, they said if they do, they probably won't say anything about it. They don't typically tell us when there's a problem with something that happened to us and we point it out. They might go, oh, okay, yeah, that was an issue, but they're not going to come back, yeah, we suspended that guy for 3 weeks. No. I have seen football crews, entire crews, suspended by the SEC. It's been a while for problems in a certain game. There was a Florida game years ago when Ryan Mallett was the quarterback, and there was some really bad calls in that game. One probably cost Arkansas the game. And the SEC came back and suspended those guys for a week.
They suspended that crew?
Yeah, and
wow,
I think they
didn't
announced
realize
that they did it.
Oh,
So
I didn't realize
sometimes they will tell you when they do this, but most of the time they won't. And so far, nothing has been said about this replay person who clearly somebody should get him in a room and go, you sure you want to be a replay guy? You don't know the rules.
Yeah, well, they can't be suspended. They can. It just probably.
And we wouldn't know that
we
because they're in a room somewhere.
Exactly. Chuck Farr asked, with the phantom foul in the Mizzou game, when was the last time we benefited from a blown call in football or basketball? The only game I remember is a PI call at Texas A&M when Hatfield was the coach that helped us go to the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that. And this is a really interesting question because here's what I think is at play here. If you're a fan, I think you're going to remember every single time there was calls that may have cost your team a game, like the Auburn game a couple of years ago, or anything like this. The Devo Davis thing where they got the guy's feet were clearly inside the circle and it was called a charge and it was a game-changing decision. So Razorback fans are going to remember these things. They're going to have a long list, and if you talk to the average fan, he probably gave him 10 minutes, he'd write down like 50 of them. Right? But if you ask him to write down calls that went Arkansas's way, that gave them the game, I don't think any of them could come up with the one this guy found. No. I can't remember any.
No.
Now, here's what I still believe. If you did mega research, and just one of these research guys that goes in and looks at everything, I still think you would find that there are way more calls that cost Arkansas a game over the years than gave them a game. Because I think in the old Southwest Conference, Arkansas got the shaft. I think when Arkansas first came into the SEC, Roy Kramer was a big believer in everybody's equal, and for a while it worked that way. As soon as he left and they brought in this other guy whose name escapes me, it all went the other way.
Yeah.
And I think right now, I'm telling people, what does the SEC do for Arkansas? You know what it does? It gives them money, a lot of money. And they've made a lot of facilities improvements and things like that. What does it give you besides money? You can say, well, prestige. We play in the best league.
The best conference.
Well, what does that do if you get beat?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, there's just a disrespect, I'm telling you, out of the conference office toward Arkansas, and you can see it everywhere you look. You can go to the SEC network, and I think that has to do with Arkansas is the smallest TV market in the SEC footprint. But look at when Houston came into the league, how they just pushed the A&M Houston rivalry out of the way and said, get out of the way, Arkansas, you go be rivals with Missouri. Yeah. And nobody wanted that. But the SEC just said, go ahead and play, little kids, go do that. I have said this before. I realize it's not going to happen, but I would like to see a reorganized college football in which you move teams around to geographics, to pay more attention to how close they are. And I would love to see Arkansas more in a conference with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, maybe Missouri, maybe Kansas State, Iowa.
Wow.
Teams that are closer, and maybe TCU.
Okay.
And I just think you'd have more in common with those teams. I think if you do this geographically, you don't have where's the conference office in the SEC? Where is it? Birmingham.
Yeah,
you know what Birmingham is? It is the Alabama capital of Alabama. If you are working the SEC office and you walk around every day and go somewhere for lunch, go do this, go do that, you are surrounded by Alabama fans.
Yeah, you are.
What is that all about?
Maybe some Auburn sprinkled in there.
No, a few.
Just a few.
If you wanted to make this fair, well, I would prefer to see it in Nashville. I would prefer to see it in Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta
would be good.
Why do you have it in Birmingham? Birmingham's not anywhere near the biggest city in the SEC footprint. Atlanta would be better because Atlanta is more of a pro football town than it is a Georgia Bulldogs place. Yeah. So there would be more going on there. You wouldn't be surrounded by Georgia fans every day.
You do have a lot of fans now of Georgia because of 2 national titles.
You do, but there's any one of a number of places you could do that. You could put that thing in Indianapolis and just take it completely outside the SEC.
Maybe Orlando?
What about Dallas?
Oh, Dallas. I like Dallas.
There's no SEC team, even when they do the expansion, that would be in Dallas. It's a pro football town.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have people working in your conference office that are surrounded by fans of one school. It's stupid to have this thing in Birmingham. Telling you that right now.
Mike is banging the desk now. We are very passionate about this. Well, we're going to move on from that, Mike, but I wonder if you'll have some people reach out and let them know that they're with you on that one. Revolution asks, who would you list as the top 5 basketball hogs of the Eddie Sutton era, the Nolan Richardson era? That's a good question.
You're going to have to pop my scripts have gotten all messed up. I don't know where I am, but you can pop these things up, and I got these now. Oh, here it is. Okay, let's go to the Eddie Sutton era. And I actually had 6 on both of these because there were some tough.
Oh, you had a tie at the bottom there?
So let's go to the Sutton era, and I think number 1 is obvious, Sidney Moncrief. But then you go Ron Brewer.
I like it.
Joe Klein, Darrell Walker, and then I got a tie at number 5 between Marvin Delph and U.S. Reed. Okay, now we go to the Nolan era.
Yeah, let's see.
You got Corliss, you got Lee Mayberry, Todd Day, Corey Beck, and then another tie, Oliver Miller and Scotty Thurman. And you're still leaving people off.
Yeah, so it really should be a top 6 for you.
It should be like a top 10 because both of those coaches had some really good players over the years. But those are my guys, and I'm sure there'd be people that would argue that I left off some names that should have been there.
Yeah, I think you got it pretty accurate there. Landy says a lot of fans were ticked off at the refs for not making the Ole Miss coach stay off the court. I know Muss gets out there a bit, but this guy was way out there several times. I thought the players were going to run into him. Should they have teed him up?
Big controversy. If you went to Twitter on Saturday, what you had were all these screenshots. And I will admit, I have seen coaches out on the floor. I think that's discretionary as to whether you warn and or tee a coach up. But come on, Kermit Davis was out there. I saw him one time. He was almost shoulder to shoulder with Anthony Black.
He was shoulder to shoulder with Pittman.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're a defender out here now. I didn't know that.
It was pretty crazy. So on the surface, you would say, yeah, that was really bad. However, let me just give you my take on this.
Okay.
Because I was up there, you were down there shooting, doing all the hard work, because I'm too old to sit down there now. My legs go to sleep.
Hey, I got you, Mike. You're good.
But I was up in the rafters in the current press row area, or press area. And here's what I noticed in that game that I immediately just fell in love with. The refs were not part of the game. They were letting both teams play defense. Walsh didn't foul out. He got one foul. It's because they let the kid play defense.
Love it.
I think, here's what I think happened. I think I figured it out. Arkansas's opponents in the 3 previous games shot 116 free throws combined. 116. I think Ole Miss shot 11.
Yeah.
So you're cutting it by about 2/3 per game. And I think somebody told them that. I don't think these guys did it on their own. I think the SEC supervisor of officials, probably with Greg Sankey's input, said, look, we've pretty much shafted Arkansas the last 3 weeks. Just go there and let them play. I don't think they'll get chippy. You know, that was supposedly the rumor that the SEC was clamping down on Arkansas because they were chippy.
No.
So if that was the truth, then yeah, they let them play. And you'd think if you let people play, there'd be more angry guys and mad. Instead, no, there was no chippiness.
No.
I didn't see any of that.
No.
So I like the way that went. Now, here's the thing that's cool about this game and what we're talking about here.
I love that.
Kermit Davis.
Got to bring up the video, right?
There was a video shot by a fan off his cell phone of another fan who got up out of his seat during a timeout, went over to those guys that sit there with the cameras right behind the baseline, and he's talking to this ref who's just on the other side. And these guys are that far apart.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that most of the time when a fan gets out of his seat and goes onto the floor to talk to a ref, he's going to get thrown out. And that ref could have thrown him out.
He could get banned for
yes,
good.
He could have been thrown out, even said, you can't come anymore this season. This ref was cool. He turns around and you can't hear what the guy's saying. You just know that he's probably saying, hey, how come you're letting Kermit Davis come out on the floor and what's going on there? And he goes, hey, he's not hurting anybody.
He did.
He's not hurting anybody. It's okay. And then they're talking. He's like, yeah, okay. And then he kind of taps the guy on the shoulder and goes, hey, and he walks off.
It was so
That
awesome.
was just the way that whole game went. Hey, who cares? We're just playing a game and your
just
team's
playing
winning.
Some basketball. It's
Your
great.
team's ahead. What are you worried about? Why are you so mad? I mean, you were all mad at the referees. Now you're not mad at us anymore, except you are mad that we don't go after this guy. We're just going to leave him alone. He's not doing anything anyway. His team's getting beat. Forget it. So that was my take on that whole Kermit Davis thing. If Kermit Davis had tripped somebody or something like that,
then he would have been teed. He would have 100%
then it would have been a big
teed.
deal. But I just didn't see it. I thought it was part of a kind of a cool thing.
That video was great. The ref could have done so much.
I just loved it. Like, hey, he's not hurting anybody.
He's fine.
If I didn't know better, I know he wasn't, but this is like, hey, it's okay. Nobody's getting hurt here. You know. And I don't want to make it clear. I don't think the ref was smoking anything, but his attitude was just so laid back. Hey, he's not hurting anybody.
Yes, it was laid back. It was great. I think shout out to Scuba Steve for posting that video as well. We'll give you some credit.
And the ref supposedly is a local guy.
I think
everybody
so,
had his name down. I don't know him, but
well, shout out to that ref.
What a great guy
that ref for sure. Okay, Mike, you're making me laugh today. Peak Hogg wants to know, what was the deal Saturday at the Ole Miss game with the police presence at the scores table during video reviews? I've never seen that before, and it's not happening at other SEC venues. It seems Hogg Twitter has the SEC officials on red alert.
According to the athletic department, it is happening at every SEC game. They say it is standard policy. It's an SEC rule. And the reason they do it is not because they think some fan's going to run up and try to attack the guys while they're looking at a replay. They do it because they don't want anybody else around. That would be mostly the other coach, either of the coaches or players or anybody else around that table. They don't want them looking at the replay, and they don't want them interacting with the refs while they look at the replay. So it's mainly so that they can say if anybody kind of comes nosing around, they can say, hey, get this guy out of here, and they say, hey, you can't be here, go away.
Yeah, and I actually didn't know this, but you can't go in the tunnel when there's any team and coaches in there. So they actually held me back. They were like, hey, Courtney, and I didn't realize that, but that's SEC policy.
Yes, and they make you wait until they're all the way on the court.
All the way on the court,
they're
yes.
50 feet away, and you can't walk into the tunnel.
No, I didn't even see one of the Ole Miss players. I go, who's in the tunnel? I was like, I can't even see him. Right. So anyways, but it is standard for all SEC schools. We have 3 questions, about Arkansas's game with South Carolina in women's basketball. And Dr. Sarks asks, how much does the women's basketball team practice defense and rebounding? We have more size this year than ever before, so that excuse just doesn't fly. South Carolina are the favorites to win another title, but that was a national embarrassment. We've got another one. Hogg in Iowa says, I tuned into the Lady Backs game early Sunday afternoon and was treated to seeing our bigs put up about 5 mortar shots from deep in about a 3-minute stretch. I thought there must be better options than that for sure, but they were open, but they were open for a reason. Yeah. Finally, from Dr. Strangepork, the Lady Backs lost to South Carolina on Sunday. It was hard to watch. Granted, any team on any day can have a game like that where nothing works. I get the youth of the team not hitting the panic button on this team, but should we be concerned?
Okay, first of all, I don't think the average Hog fan understands anything about South Carolina and how good they are. They do that. They do that almost every game. I mean, they're
outscoring people by 30 points.
Yeah, or more than that. I had it written 37 points.
Oh, 37. Excuse me, it's even more than that. It's closer to 40.
37 points a game and rebounding by 20 per game. The numbers were even worse for Arkansas, so I get people being concerned, but this is what you've got to take into consideration. And again, talking about the SEC office, how did they end up with the schedule where they played 3 games in 6 days, 2 of them road games? How do you end up playing the number 1 and number 3 team in the country back to back with 2 days off? And then they went down and almost beat LSU, got them into the last minute, had the lead, and lost by 3. You're playing your tail off against the number 3 team in the country. You can't even come back home. There's problems with the plane coming to pick you up, so you got to spend the night there, come back here, and then immediately go to South Carolina and play them. And I think their legs were gone. That was my view of what happened.
They're gassed.
They were just gassed. And again, chunk that up to the SEC office. How did they make that schedule? How do you end up with that crazy schedule?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And Mike Neighbors even said it before they went into this week. This is going to be the toughest week of our schedule. I mean, 3 games in 1 week. It's insane. And SEC games, too.
And back-to-back games with 2 days in between number 1 and number 3.
Yeah.
And they're both on the road.
Yeah. And to be fair, to give some credit to Arkansas, they did keep in it in the first quarter.
Yeah, it
I actually
wasn't just
thought
a
the
complete
first quarter
blowout the whole way.
Exactly.
I think the further they got into that game, the more their legs gave out.
Exactly. They just got gassed quick. So I agree with you on that too, Mike. Our final question today is from Hot Dogger, who says, I know this is old history, but what was the deal when Briles hired Dana Altman to be to the basketball program? I never really understood what happened there.
This is another one of those crazy stories. Takes a while to tell, but it was in that period in which John White was trying to figure out a way to get Frank Briles out of here, get him gone. And so it all revolved around that. Now you go all the way back to when Nolan was fired. Frank had Bill Self pretty much hired. He was at Illinois. He was going to bring him in here, had relatives over in the Tulsa area, would really wanted to come back here, and he would have taken the job. John White said to Frank, you fired a black guy, you got to hire a black guy. Got to be politically correct here. And Frank went, well, I don't think that's what do you mean? Well, Nolan may sue us. Well, Nolan sued him anyway, so
yeah.
I'm not sure that was a valid excuse. But anyway, so he had to hire Stan Heath. Stan Heath had 2 really bad years, finally started getting it going, had 2 20-win seasons, but Frank is saying to John White, look, 20-win season is not our standard. When Nolan was here, we were going to Sweet 16s, Elite 8s, Final Fours. We were winning 28 games, 30 games, not 20, and going to the NCAA tournament and going 1 game and out. We need a better coach. And about that time, Billy Clyde Gillespie, who was the hottest name in coaching at that point at A&M, and he was doing all this stuff, he lets it be known that he would be interested in the Arkansas job. So Frank, and he made a mistake, he should have actually talked to him and made sure he would come. But he convinced John White, okay, we're going to get rid of Stan Heath because we can get this guy. But then what happened was by the time they did the process, Billy Clyde Gillespie had been contacted by Kentucky, and he went there instead of Arkansas. Yeah. So now Frank is stuck. And John White, knowing him the way I do, he was probably loving this. Hey, you made me get rid of this guy. There was no reason to. He'd won 21 games the year before. And now look at you. You're stuck because you didn't do your homework on this guy. But Frank is good at what he does. He picks up the phone and in probably less than a half a day, he zeroes in on Dana Altman, who's an up-and-coming, really good coach at Creighton. And he talks Altman into taking the job. The problem with Altman was he later admitted he was never really totally sure that he should leave Creighton at that point. So he comes in, they do this introductory press conference at Bud Walton, and he just looks uncomfortable the whole time. He's up there supposedly calling the hogs. He doesn't know how to do it. And he's kind of looking like, this is a weird tradition. And everybody's like, what's up with this new guy?
Weird.
He doesn't even act like he wants to be here. So it's all over. Frank has had a tough week trying to, solve this Billy Clyde Gillespie problem. He feels like he finally came up with a good coach that's better than Stan Heath for sure. And he goes off to Augusta to play golf. He leaves town. Dana Altman goes upstairs to talk to the current Arkansas players. He's interviewing them one at a time coming into his office. After a couple of hours of that process, he's like, whoa, we got some issues on this team that have to be corrected. And I was told a lot of them were related to academics. He had a guy, an academics guy at Creighton that he trusted, and he wanted to bring him in. If we bring him in, we're going to get this academic thing straightened out. We don't want to, this was back when APR was becoming, your academic progress rate was becoming important. We don't want a bunch of guys ineligible because of this. This guy will keep it going. So he picks up the phone and calls Frank's office to say, hey, I need to hire this guy. He gets told Frank's out of town. Well, I need his cell phone number. Well, okay, I'll give you to one of his associate ADs. So they let him call one of the associate ADs. And the guy, for some wacky reason, tells him, don't call Frank when he's playing at golf. He's real tired and he doesn't want to be bothered. And Altman's like, well, this is important. He says, well, just wait till Monday. So Altman thinks, okay, I'm supposed to have dinner with John White tonight. I'll just ask him to give me the number and I'll get it that way. So he goes to dinner with John White and he tells John White all this. And he's expecting John White to help him out. This is important. I need to get my own academic guy in here. White does nothing. Now, you can speculate on why. Mm-hmm. I would speculate because White's sitting there thinking, we got some problems here. Old Frankie didn't have this thing nailed down as well as he thought. Okay, well, it's not me. He didn't want me involved in this thing. I'm letting him do it himself. So when Altman didn't get any phone number for Frank or anything like that. He went back to his hotel room that night, called his boss up and said, "Can I come back?" And the boss said, "Sure." And all of a sudden, Arkansas doesn't have a coach. So the next day, Frank is still at Augusta. John White makes a big deal out of calling a press conference out in front of Bud Walton with all of us, telling us, we don't have a coach. But don't worry, because John White, I'm going to be the one that hires the next coach, and I'm going to get it right. And what did he do? He went out and hired a search firm. And guess what the search firm gave us? John Pelfrey, the worst basketball coach at Arkansas in my time here, and maybe of all time.
Oh.
So
rough.
He really messed that up. But the bottom line on this is what happens when you got an AD and a chancellor. Remember when I talked last week about ADs and boosters trying to tell the head coach what to do? But now you got a chancellor that wants to tell the AD what to do, and he doesn't know anything about athletics, and you just get these crazy things that happen. Yeah. And that's one of the craziest stories that ever happened here. Houston Nutt's over there in spring football, fixing to have one of his practices over, and he's used to having 10 or 12 reporters out there, and there's nobody, because we're all over at Bud Walton.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's going on.
What's going on with this hire? And again, we got John Pelfrey, and don't get me started about the Pelfrey years. That was like
I won't get you started about those, because even I know that those were not good years for Arkansas. Anyways, we're running out of time, so thanks so much for joining us on this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.